Frank Lucas, born September 9, 1930 in LaGrange, North Carolina, was a notorious gangster and drug kingpin who built an international drug empire spanning from New York to Southeast Asia in the 1960s. He used violence, extortion, and bribery to maintain his empire, amassing millions in cash and property. He was arrested in 1975, but his biography is shrouded in fact, mystery and myth, much of which has been perpetuated by Lucas himself. He grew up in rural North Carolina during the Great Depression and claimed that a traumatic event, the murder of his cousin by the Ku Klux Klan, sparked his life of crime, but there is no evidence to support this claim. Growing up in rural North Carolina during the Great Depression, Frank Lucas had to find ways for his family to survive. He resorted to stealing food and later, mugging intoxicated customers outside of a local tavern. As he got older, he worked as a truck driver for a pipe company, but was fired after getting caught sleeping with the boss's daughter. In a fight that ensued, Lucas hit the boss on the head with a pipe, stole $400 from the company, and set the establishment on fire. Fearing arrest and a long prison sentence, his mother urged him to flee to New York. Upon arriving in Harlem in 1946, Lucas saw how money was truly made on the streets through illegal gambling and drugs. He began committing crimes, becoming more bold and ruthless with each one. He robbed a bar, stole diamonds from a jewelry store, broke into a high-stakes crap game, and ultimately shot a local thug in a drug deal gone wrong. This caught the attention of Ellsworth "Bumpy" Johnson, a well-known Harlem gangster who mentored Lucas and taught him the ins and outs of the criminal world. Lucas took these lessons to a whole new level, building one of the most successful criminal organizations of the 20th century. After Johnson's death in 1968, Lucas seized control of Harlem and expanded his empire. Atkinson agreed to supply Lucas with heroin, but Lucas wanted to see the operations for himself. The two men traveled through the jungles of Thailand and located Atkinson's main supplier, a Chinese Thai man named Luechi Rubiwat, also known as 007. Rubiwat controlled several hundred acres of poppy fields in the Golden Triangle and had caves nearby where the poppies were processed into heroin. On his first trip, Lucas purchased 132 kilos of high-quality heroin for $4,200 per kilo, compared to the $50,000 per kilo he would have paid to the mafia in Harlem. To set up an international distribution system, Lucas and Atkinson created an army inside the army, by recruiting key military personnel, including high-ranking American and South Vietnamese officers, using a combination of charm and bribes. Lucas personally oversaw operations in Southeast Asia, often disguising himself as an army officer. The plan was to send shipments of heroin on military planes to bases on the eastern seaboard, where accomplices would then unpack and prepare the heroin for sale. Some reports suggest that the heroin was smuggled in the coffins of dead servicemen, while others claim that it was hidden in furniture. Lucas testified that he recruited a North Carolina carpenter to build over 24 government-issued coffins with false bottoms to smuggle the heroin, but it is unclear if this method was actually used. In setting up his organization in the United States, Frank Lucas was careful to cover every detail, only recruiting trusted relatives and close friends from North Carolina, like Leslie Atkinson, as he believed they were less likely to steal from him or be tempted by the vices of the city. He brought his 5 younger brothers to New York, where they became known as the Country Boys, and controlled the territory on 116th Street between 7th and 8th Avenues in Harlem. Lucas approached the marketing of his product like any entrepreneur, offering value for the right price. He was able to offer a nearly pure heroin, which he cut at a higher level than most street heroin, and hired young women to mix the imported heroin with mannite and quinine. To prevent theft, these women wore nothing but plastic gloves. He also used brutal violence to protect his investment and inflict fear in adversaries, inspiring respect from friends and business partners. As planned, the money came pouring in, with Lucas often boasting that he was making $1 million a day. To launder the money, he personally drove large bags of bills to a bank in the Bronx, where the bankers would count it and exchange it for legitimate bills. The bank executives later pleaded guilty to 200 misdemeanor violations of the Bank Secrecy Act. At the height of his career, Lucas had over $52 million in various Cayman Island banks and 1,000 kilograms of heroin worth $300,000 per kilo. He also bought into legitimate businesses such as dry cleaners and gas stations to hide the money, as well as owning office buildings in Detroit, apartments in Los Angeles, Miami, and Puerto Rico, and a several thousand-acre ranch in North Carolina called Paradise Valley. where he had 300 head of Black Angus cattle and prize breeding bulls. Lucas also mingled with New York celebrities, often seen at the city's hottest nightclubs with famous athletes like Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali, and entertainers like James Brown, Berry Gordy and Diana Ross. He even planned to be in a Hollywood gangster movie, The Ripoff, set in the streets of New York City, contributing nearly $100,000 to the production and lending several of his exotic cars. However, the movie was never finished. He spent money freely, buying expensive jewelry and clothing for himself and his wife. Despite this, he often preferred to dress casually to avoid drawing attention to himself. Lucas's relationship with Harlem gangster Ellsworth, Bumpy, Johnson is a point of contention, as Lucas claims Johnson took him under his wing, while others close to Johnson, including his widow, Mame, say that Johnson distrusted Lucas and never made him more than a flunky. For Lucas to be successful in selling heroin on the streets of Harlem, he needed the support of corrupt police officers. During the 1960s and 1970s, the New York Police Department's Special Investigations Unit, SU, was notoriously corrupt, with officers breaking in and conducting warrantless searches, creating illegal phone taps, using bribery, and controlling addicted informants with confiscated heroin. Several officers were on the take and turned a blind eye to local drug dealers, including Lucas himself, who was caught with several kilograms of heroin and cocaine in his car by the head of the SU, Bob Lucy. According to Lucas, he had to negotiate his release with an offer of $30,000 and 2 keys of heroin, a common practice that made many New York police officers complicit in the crimes they were supposed to be stopping. In light of the police corruption, the Justice Department formed the Special Narcotics Task Force, SNTF, in 1971 to investigate and put a stop to it. Headed by Assistant Prosecutor Richard "Richie" Roberts, the unit was determined to bring down corrupt officers and drug traffickers. Roberts, a former U.S. Marine and Seton Hall University Law School graduate, had a reputation for being street smart and incorruptible. On January 28, 1975, the SNTF and DEA launched a surprise raid on Frank Lucas's house in Teaneck, New Jersey. During the raid, Lucas's wife, Julie, threw several suitcases filled with cash out the window, totaling $584,000 in street money. The raid also yielded keys to Cayman Islands safe deposit boxes, property deeds, and a ticket to a United Nations ball. Despite the arrests of 10 individuals, Lucas was not among them as there was no direct evidence linking him to the drug operation. However, during the interrogation of suspects, one of Lucas's nephews, a member of the Country Boys, broke and provided evidence that led to the arrest of 43 people, many of them in Lucas's immediate family. Despite the weak case against Lucas, the testimony of his co-defendants was enough to put him on trial. During the trial, the prosecution presented evidence of the devastating effects of Lucas's Blue Magic brand of heroin, which was far more potent than most heroin and caused many overdose deaths. Roberts argued that Lucas had killed more black people than the KKK with the sale of Blue Magic. The jury found Lucas guilty and he was sentenced to 70 years in prison. However, Lucas turned informant, providing names of mafia accomplices and corrupt members of the New York Police Department, even giving up his heroin connection in Thailand, Leslie Atkinson. As a result, his testimony led to 150 multi-defendant cases, including 75% of New York's Drug Enforcement Agency and 30 members of his own family. Frank Lucas's sentence for drug trafficking was reduced to 15 years in exchange for his cooperation with the authorities. After his release in 1981, he was arrested again in 1984 for attempting to exchange drugs for money. His defense attorney, former prosecutor Richard Roberts, helped secure a lighter sentence of 7 years. Following his final release in 1991, Lucas returned to a changed Harlem, where he began to understand the destructive impact of his drug empire. He sought to make amends by working with a nonprofit organization founded by his daughter, which supports the children of incarcerated parents. In 2007, his life was depicted in the film American Gangster, starring Denzel Washington. Lucas's wife, Juliana Ferrate, also served time in prison for her involvement in his drug activities. She was arrested again in 2010 for attempting to sell drugs. Lucas passed away in 2019 from natural causes.